Breaking news on 2 News.
The nomination of Amy Coney Barrett of Indiana to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is confirmed.
Thanks for joining us for 2 News at 7. You heard it right there. We're starting with breaking news out of Washington, D.C. In just the last hour, the Senate has confirmed Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court. Tonight's 52-48 vote comes just 8 days before the election, which is the closest high court confirmation ever to a presidential election. Trump's choice to fill the vacancy of the late liberal icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg potentially opens a new era of rulings on abortion, the Affordable Care Act, and even his own election. Again, Amy Coney Barrett has been confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court tonight. Senators voted along party lines, as was expected. Tonight, Governor Herbert responding to Barrett's confirmation, in part saying Amy Coney Barrett is eminently qualified to serve as a judge on the Supreme Court. Her background informs us that she will be a great jurist. And Utah Senator Mike Lee also tweeting his support for Barrett, saying in part, tonight's vote was a huge win for the American people. Judge Barrett understands that lawmaking by unelected judges is inconsistent with the Constitution and usurps the prerogatives of the legislative branch. And we'll continue to follow that story throughout the night. We do want to switch things over to meteorologist Matt Johnson and talk about just how cold it's been. We broke some records this morning.
Yeah, we had record cold and the wind to factor in, so it felt even colder than some of these temperatures. But all these listed here, record colds this morning, -9 in Randolph, Silver Lake up by Brighton, 1 degree. Single digits for Deer Creek, Pineview, and then look at Logan and Capitol Reef in the teens. Wow, it's been really cold. This afternoon, this is all we could muster. 32 in Canyonlands, 31 in Vernal, mid-30s. These are temperatures along the Wasatch Front that we typically see in January, folks. We're running 20 to 30 degrees below where we should be this time of year. Notice throughout the evening, we'll go 30s through 8 p.m. Then it's back to the 20s, folks, even low 20s as we get into tomorrow morning. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll talk more record lows tonight and a warm-up. That's coming up.
Ooh, the warm-up sounds good. Thanks so much, Matt. As coronavirus cases rise here in Utah, hospitals starting to become overwhelmed. So the question is, what would happen to patients if hospitals started to ration care? One patient advocate says it could be catastrophic for really sick patients who need urgent care in a hospital, but it would be far worse for some than others.
If you have higher rates of people of color who are getting COVID and therefore being hospitalized for COVID and therefore needing an ICU bed, then higher rates of people of color are going to face that care rationing. And the same goes for the disabled community and for seniors.
Stacy Stanford, a health policy analyst with Utah Health Policy Project. She says the people that are already suffering the most during the pandemic are the same people who would suffer the most in this scenario. And Utah hospitals are already preparing in case they do have to ration care and make those tough choices about which patients get the most help. Michael Locklear shows us how a crisis mode could be weeks away.
A breaking point may be weeks away for Utah hospitals. State spokesman Joe Doherty says intensive care beds are in short supply.
You only have to go into crisis standards of care if you have run out of resources to be able to provide enough for everybody. And we know that we're dangerously close to that right now.
The state epidemiologist calls rationing care maddening and unacceptable.
It's a tough situation to get into.
Dr. Michael Bauman is chief medical officer for Mountain Star. His 8 hospitals in Utah have room right now, but the state's 2 largest hospitals are on the brink.
Is this a who lives and who dies kind of scenario?
It's not really, it can be who lives and who dies. It's a decision of who can get the most out of the medical care that we can provide.
For example, a man in his mid-20s with no pre-existing conditions may get a ventilator over someone with lung cancer.
We can avoid this if we do the basics.
Dr. Bauman says crisis mode is not inevitable as long as people are careful.
If we don't continue or change our course around masking, social distancing, and spacing and not getting in large groups, we're going to have more cases and all of our systems will be in trouble.
The governor would have to sign something for crisis standards of care to kick in, and after a weekend of record cases, hospitals fear that move may be necessary in the next couple of weeks. In Maury, Michael Locklear, 2 News.
Taking a look now at the number of patients who are in Utah hospitals with coronavirus. So far, there are 299 people hospitalized and 112 are in the ICU. When it comes to available ICU beds, close to 69% of the beds statewide are occupied by COVID patients. Since the pandemic began, 1.1% of all patients hospitalized have been admitted to the ICU. Today, there were 1,200 new coronavirus cases across our state. State health officials also announced 2 more deaths, bringing the total to 574. The state infection rate is now at 17%, and our rolling 7-day average case count is nearly 1,500. The state's imposed circuit breaker is set to end this week, and that would leave any counties in the moderate level without a requirement to wear a mask in public. The Trump administration says it's ramping up the distribution of rapid coronavirus tests across the country. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, states are on track to receive close to 37 million Binax Now antigen tests by the end of the week. Officials say they're part of the 150 million tests that the federal government already planned to send out. Abbott Laboratories, which developed that test, says it delivers results in 15 minutes. There is still hope for a stimulus deal before Election Day. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told CNN she is optimistic about Congress passing a coronavirus relief package by next Tuesday, by Election Day. She is expected to continue talks with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and some of the sticking points right now include plans for testing, tracing, and the overall cost of that bill. Stay with 2 News as we continue to follow the very latest surrounding this pandemic. We are constantly updating our website with the newest information. You can always go there, KUTV.com. It took 10 years, but today capital murder charges have been filed in the fatal stabbing of Sherry Black. Law enforcement says the arrest was made after a breakthrough in how they used the DNA. Kelly Vaughn has more on why officers say this case could pave the way in solving other cold cases.
10 years ago, investigators were able to collect a suspect's fingerprints, palm print, and DNA from the crime scene. While they had the DNA, they couldn't match it to anyone in a database.
How else can we use that DNA to attach it to our suspect? That became the focus of the investigation.
The chief of South Salt Lake Police, Jack Caruth, says investigators worked with a DNA technology company that was able to give them the family history of the suspect.
If you think of genealogy, and Ancestry.com, how that works. I mean, I think that's a pretty simple concept.
The Salt Lake County District Attorney, Sim Gill, says from there, detectives methodically went through the family tree, eliminating people, and narrowed in on the suspect. Then they had to get the suspect's DNA to see if it was a match.
When you and I go into public places, we leave our DNA behind. And so, again, they relied on available lawful means.
Chief Caruth says this investigation will change how they handle other cases in the future.
All the methods that we used in this investigation are now being deployed or utilized in other cold case investigations, not only with our department, but with several other departments.
He says hearing the news of the charges finally being filed was emotional, considering all of the work investigators put in and as a first step in closure for Sherry Black's family.
We sat in many meetings together. We felt many frustrations. We shed many tears together. So I am completely relieved and joyful for the family.
The suspect is charged with aggravated murder, which could face the death penalty. Moving forward, the district attorney will have 60 days after the preliminary hearing to decide if they'll be pursuing capital punishment. We're now reporting in Salt Lake City. I'm Kelly Vaughn for 2 News.
Debt of thanks to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. We appreciate it.
We want to give you a live
Mitch.
look right
Thank
now.
you.
They are actually swearing in Judge Amy Coney Barrett. She is being sworn
And we are
in
grateful
as a
well
Supreme Court Justice as we
to
speak.
the
Let's
Senate
listen in for just a moment to
Judiciary
President
Chairman
Trump.
Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Lindsey. Also with us, Senators Marsha Blackburn, Mike Braun.
Okay, you can hear
Bill
him
Cassidy,
there thanking those
Kevin
who
Cramer,
are in presence at this nomination again as she is being sworn in as a Supreme Court Justice. We will continue to follow this story throughout the night. Again, a live look from DC.